Welcome aboard, everybody, and strap yourselves in for a deep dive. We're about to embark on a journey through the surprisingly fascinating world of FAA regulations.
You make it sound exciting.
Well, it is. Think about it. These regulations, these so-called parts, dictate everything that happens up in the air, from how planes are designed and built to who gets to fly them and how they're operated. It's a whole hidden world up there, and we're about to uncover its secrets. And you've given us quite the treasure map to work with.
I wouldn't call it a treasure map, more like a very long list.
Fair enough. A very long list of FAA regulations. But hey, that's what this deep dive is all about, right? Unpacking complex topics and making sense of it all.
Sounds like a plan.
So where do we even begin? I mean, this list covers everything from aircraft design to pilot certifications to, get this, drone operation. It's a lot.
Well, I think a good place to start is with safety. That's really the foundation of everything the FAA does. I mean, they want to make sure that when you step on an airplane, you can be reasonably confident that you're going to get off at your destination safe and sound.
Right, obviously.
Mm.
Makes total sense. And I do see a bunch of parts here related to safety, like 23, 25, 27, 29.
Mm.
Are those what you're talking about?
Exactly. Those are the big ones. Think of them as like the blueprints for building safe aircraft. They're all about making sure that any plane that takes to the skies meets incredibly rigorous standards.
Okay, so let's break that down a bit. We're talking about things like what? Making sure the wings are attached properly?
Yeah. Well, yes, but it goes way beyond that. We're talking about thousands of hours of engineering analysis, testing, inspections, everything from the materials used in construction to the design of the engines to the avionics systems. It all has to be up to snuff.
Wow, that is intense. I had no idea. So much went into it. So those parts we mentioned, 23, 25, and so on, they each cover different types of aircraft.
You got it. Part 23, for example, that covers your smaller aircraft. The Cessnas and Pipers you might see at a general aviation airport.
Okay, so like the small planes people fly for fun or for like short
Yeah,
trips.
exactly. Now, Part 25, that's where things get serious. We're talking about the big leagues, your Boeings, your Airbuses, the kind of planes that fly across oceans. Those regulations are even more stringent.
Makes sense. You'd want the jumbo jets to be held to the highest possible standard.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the initial design and construction either. Part 43 comes into play there.
Part 43.
Yeah, Part 43, that one's all about maintenance. Even the most well-built plane needs regular checkups and maintenance to stay airworthy, right?
Right, like any complex machine.
Exactly. And it's not just about kicking the tires and making sure the engine starts. We're talking about meticulously inspecting every single component, following strict maintenance schedules, and making sure everything is in tip-top shape. Part 43 is all about preventing problems before they even arise.
So it's like preventative medicine, but for planes.
Exactly. And trust me, you'd much rather catch a potential issue on the ground than have it crop up at 30,000 feet.
That's reassuring. I'm feeling safer already. But okay, we've talked about the planes themselves. What about the people flying them? There's a human element to all this too, right?
You're absolutely right. Aviation safety isn't just about the machines, it's about the people operating them. And that's where this whole other set of regulations comes in.
Like what?
Like Parts 61, 63, 65, these are the ones that lay down the law for pilots, flight instructors, and other aviation personnel. It's all about making sure that anyone who steps foot in a cockpit is properly trained, certified, and medically fit to fly.
Okay, so break that down for me. What kind of things are we talking about here? Like how many hours of flight time do you need to be a pilot?
Well, that depends on what kind of pilot you want to be. Part 61, for instance, lays out all the different pilot certifications and their requirements. So for a private pilot's license, you need a minimum of 40 hours of flight time, but for a commercial pilot's license, it's significantly more. We're talking 250 hours. And it's not just about clocking in the hours either.
There's got to be more to it than that.
Oh, there's a lot more. You have to pass rigorous written exams, demonstrate proficiency in various flight maneuvers, and undergo regular medical evaluations.
Wow, so it's not just about being a daredevil who loves to fly. You need to have serious knowledge and skill.
Absolutely. You're responsible for the lives of your passengers and crew, not to mention people on the ground. Speaking of which, there are even regulations governing things like pilot fatigue, how long they can fly without a break, things like that. It's all designed to minimize the risk of human error.
Makes sense. You wouldn't want a sleepy pilot at the controls.
Yeah.
And I can't believe we haven't even mentioned drones yet. I see a Part 107 here. What's that all about?
Ah, yes. Part 107, that's the one for all the drone enthusiasts out there. It's all about unmanned aircraft systems, covering everything from registration requirements to airspace restrictions to operating rules.
So even though drones are relatively new to the aviation scene, they've got their own set of regulations already.
Absolutely. They may be small, but they still pose potential risks, so the FAA wants to make sure they're operated safely and responsibly. And, with the way technology is advancing, who knows what the future holds? We might have drone taxis zipping through the air someday.
Imagine that. Drone traffic jams. Okay, but before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we've talked about the planes, the pilots, even the drones. What else is there?
Well, we still need to talk about how all these aircraft actually operate within our airspace. And that's where things get really interesting, because you've got all these planes, from little Cessnas to massive Airbuses sharing the same skies.
Yeah, and somehow they don't bump into each other, usually.
Right. So how does that work? Well, that's where Part 91 comes in.
Part 91.
Yep. Part 91, the holy grail of general operating and flight rules. This is like the rule book for everyone operating in U.S. airspace. It covers everything from basic flight maneuvers to right-of-way rules when you encounter other aircraft in the air, how high different planes can fly, what to do in emergencies. It's all there.
It sounds pretty comprehensive.
It has to be. We're talking about preventing chaos in the sky. And then, of course, you have parts 121 and 135, which dive into the specific rules for commercial airlines and on-demand operators like charter flights.
So those are even more specific rules on top of the general ones in Part 91.
Exactly. For example, Part 121, which governs those big commercial airlines, covers things like pilot training and flight time limitations. They even have regulations on how much rest pilots need to get between flights.
Wow, they really think of everything.
Well, they try to, because when you're responsible for hundreds of passengers, there's no room for error.
So we've got all these layers of regulations, all these different parts. It seems like it takes a whole lot of effort to keep the aviation industry running smoothly.
It really does. And honestly, we've only just scratched the surface here. There are also regulations governing things like air traffic control, aircraft maintenance, environmental protection. The list goes on. But I think you can start to see how it all ties together. Each of these parts plays a crucial role in creating a framework for safe and efficient air travel.
It really is quite impressive.
It is, and it's a testament to the dedication of countless individuals and organizations working behind the scenes to make sure we can all enjoy the miracle of flight.
Well said. And on that note, where can our listeners go to learn more about these fascinating and surprisingly comprehensive FAA regulations?
Well, the FAA website is a great resource. You can find all the regulations there if you're feeling brave enough to dive into the details.
Just be prepared to spend some time there. I have a feeling it's easy to get lost in the world of aviation regulations, but that's all part of the fun, right?
Absolutely. The more you learn, the more you realize how much there is to know.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you to explore the skies of knowledge. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of FAA regulations.